Humans are the only animals that routinely apply heat to food before eating it. Every known human society cooks. The ingredients change, the methods change, the fuel changes, but the basic act remains. Lions do not roast their kills. Gorillas do not boil roots. Chimpanzees can use simple tools, but none of them gathers around a controlled fire to prepare dinner. Humans do. And cooking is not merely a cultural preference. Take modern humans away from kitchens, farms, processed food, and carefully cultivated produce, and surviving entirely on wild, raw food becomes extraordinarily difficult. Our teeth are too small, our jaws are too weak, our digestive system is too compact. We do not simply enjoy cooked food. Our bodies appear to expect it. Look at a chimpanzee, and then look at yourself. The chimp has a powerful jaw, large chewing muscles, and a digestive system built to process tough raw material. You have a smaller mouth, smaller teeth, a shorter gut, and a brain that consumes an enormous share of your daily energy. Those differences may record one of the largest exchanges in human evolution. Less energy spent processing food, and more energy available for the brain. Which raises a question that reverses the usual story. Did intelligent humans invent cooking? Or did cooking help create intelligent humans? Before cooking, eating was not a short interruption in the day. For many primates, eating is the day. Raw roots, stems, leaves, and wild fruit must be crushed mechanically before the digestive system can reach much of the energy inside them. Modern chimpanzees can spend close to half their waking hours feeding. A mouthful is collected, chewed, crushed, and swallowed. Then the process begins again. There is little separation between finding food and processing food. Life is organized around both. Harvard anthropologist Richard Wrangham experienced part of this problem while studying chimpanzees in Uganda. He tried eating some of the wild foods they ate. They were fibrous, bitter, and exhausting to chew. A single piece of wild fruit could require minutes of work while providing very little usable energy to a human body. The important point was not that the food tasted unpleasant. It was that modern human anatomy seemed poorly suited to living that way. If our distant ancestors once survived on tough, raw food, something must have changed between their bodies and ours. Something allowed our lineage to obtain more energy without spending most of the day chewing. Something reduced the need for huge teeth, powerful jaws, and a large digestive system. And Wrangham's answer was cooking. The familiar version of human evolution says our brains became larger, our intelligence improved, and eventually we learned to control fire. The cooking hypothesis reverses that order.
As our distant ancestors once survived on tough, raw food, something must have changed between their bodies and ours. Something allowed our lineage to obtain more energy without spending most of the day chewing. Something reduced the need for huge teeth, powerful jaws, and a large digestive system. And Wrangham's answer was cooking. The familiar version of human evolution says our brains became larger, our intelligence improved, and eventually we learned to control fire.
To understand how that could happen, start with a potato. Inside a raw potato, starch is packed into tight structures that digestive enzymes struggle to penetrate. Add heat and water, and those structures swell and loosen through a process called gelatinization. The potato may contain roughly the same material, but chemically, it has become much easier for your body to attack. Your enzymes can reach more of the starch and convert more of it into glucose. Same food, different amount of usable energy. Protein changes too. Heat unfolds many of the complex protein structures in meat, making them easier for digestive enzymes to break apart. Tough connective tissue begins to soften. In plant foods, heating damages cell structures and releases nutrients that would otherwise remain partially trapped. Fire can also destroy pathogens and reduce some of the defensive compounds plants produce to discourage animals from eating them. Cooking does not magically place new calories inside food. It makes more of the energy already present available to the body. The simplest way to understand cooking is as digestion before swallowing. Your body normally has to crush food, unfold proteins, penetrate plant structures, and neutralize biological threats. Heat performs part of that work outside the body. Fire became an external stomach, one that did not have to be carried, supplied with blood, or maintained as living tissue. Once food regularly arrived softer and easier to process, maintaining enormous jaws, teeth, and intestines became less useful. And that created an opportunity for the body to invest somewhere else. The first reward from cooking may not have been a larger brain. It may have been time. Raw, fibrous food requires sustained chewing. Cooked food can be swallowed much faster. If cooking reduced feeding by even a few hours each day, early humans suddenly possessed something no other primate had in the same quantity: hours that were not dedicated to finding food or mechanically processing it. Fast? Time to travel farther. Time to make tools. Time to protect children. Time to observe other groups. Time to plan a hunt instead of constantly processing the previous meal. And fire changed where those hours could be spent. It produced warmth and light. It offered some protection from predators. It allowed groups to remain together after sunset instead of immediately surrendering the night to darkness. The hearth was simultaneously a cooking surface, a defensive boundary, and a gathering point. The calories mattered, but so did the shared hours created around them. Measured, an animal that finishes eating quickly can do something after the meal. It can repair a tool, teach a skill, remember where animals were seen. Around the emergence of Homo erectus, roughly 1.9 million years ago, the human lineage begins to look noticeably different. Bodies become taller and better suited to traveling long distances. Brain size increases. At the same time, teeth and jaws become smaller. These features do not prove that cooking caused the transformation. Human evolution rarely leaves evidence that clean. But the changes fit what we would expect from an animal increasingly dependent on softer, more energy-dense food. A large digestive system is expensive tissue. It needs blood, energy, and constant maintenance. A large brain is even more demanding. The adult human brain represents only a small portion of body mass, yet it consumes roughly 1/5 of the body's resting energy. One organ consuming around 20% of the resting energy budget. Supporting an enormous digestive system and a rapidly expanding brain at the same time would be difficult. But if food begins arriving partly processed, the gut can become smaller without sacrificing the amount of energy absorbed. The body can redirect part of that metabolic budget elsewhere. Susana Herculano Rosell, a Brazilian neuroscientist, examined this problem by estimating how much time other primates would need to spend eating to support a human-sized brain. A gorilla already spends most of its day feeding. To support far more brain tissue while remaining on the same raw diet, it would need to eat for even longer. Eventually, the day runs out. There are only so many hours available for chewing. Human ancestors escaped that limit by changing the food before it entered the mouth. Cooking increased the energy return from an hour of eating. It allowed a primate to support more expensive tissue without spending nearly every waking hour feeding. Less chewing, less digestive machinery, more usable energy. And over enough generations, more brain. There is an obvious problem with this theory. Bodies begin changing close to 2 million years ago. But for decades, the strongest archaeological evidence for controlled fire was much younger. That left a large gap between the biological argument and the physical remains. If cooking helped shape Homo erectus, where were the ancient hearths? Fire is unusually difficult to trace across such enormous periods. A small open fire leaves ash, burned fragments, and altered soil. Wind scatters it, rain moves it, erosion removes it, animals disturb it. Later human activity destroys what remains. A campfire used for one evening in the open could become almost invisible long before 1 million years had passed. The archaeological record naturally favors repeated fires inside protected places, such as caves. In June 2026, researchers published new evidence from Wonderwork Cave in South Africa. Burned small animal bones were found in layers broadly dated between about 1.07 and 1.79 million years ago. The remains were located deep inside the cave, beyond the likely reach of an ordinary wildfire. The burning also appeared in repeated, spatially patterned episodes. The researchers argued that hominins probably brought fire into the cave. That could push controlled fire use much closer to the emergence of Homo erectus. But the distinction matters. Evidence of fire is not automatically evidence of cooking. The fire could have been used for light, warmth, protection, or several purposes at once. The clearest direct evidence of cooking a specific food is younger. At Gesher Benot Yaakov, in present-day Israel, researchers studied freshwater fish teeth dating back roughly 780,000 years ago. The teeth appeared to have been exposed to controlled, relatively low temperatures, rather than being thrown into an uncontrolled blaze. The fish seem to have been deliberately heated and eaten at the site. That is currently the earliest direct evidence identifying a particular food that hominins cooked. So the honest answer is that we still do not know exactly when routine cooking began. Fire may have been carried and managed before humans learned to ignite it whenever they wanted. Cooking may have emerged gradually, rather than appearing as one sudden invention. And a practice can transform evolution long before it begins leaving clear archaeological remains.
Our own bodies provide another clue, although this evidence also needs careful wording. People can live on carefully planned raw diets, especially when they have access to cultivated produce, imported foods, oils, appliances, and nutritional supplements. But that is very different from surviving on uncultivated wild food with no modern food system supporting you. Strict long-term raw diets can make obtaining enough energy and certain nutrients difficult. One study of raw food diets found substantial weight loss among many participants. It also found partial or complete amenorrhea, the loss of menstruation, in roughly 30% of women under 45. The effect was more common among women eating the highest proportion of raw food. Amenorrhea can occur when the body decides it does not have enough available energy to support reproduction. That study does not prove that ancient humans required cooking, but it shows that removing most food processing can place significant pressure on the modern human body. Our anatomy has surrendered much of the equipment other primates use to process wild raw food. We do not have their enormous chewing muscles, broad teeth, or extensive fermentation capacity. In exchange, we carry a metabolically costly brain and rely heavily on food that has already been softened, cut, ground, fermented, or heated. Cooking is not the only form of food processing, but it is the oldest and one of the most powerful. We changed the food. Then, across enough generations, the food changed us.
Packing pace? Cooking also creates a new social problem. Raw food can often be eaten immediately after it's found. Cooked food must be collected in one place, protected while it is prepared, and divided after it's ready. Someone has to maintain the fire. Someone has to watch the food. Someone away from the camp must trust that a share will remain when they return. The moment food becomes a delayed, shared resource, cooperation becomes more valuable, and theft becomes more damaging. Wrangham extends this argument further. He proposes that the hearth may have strengthened pair bonds, divisions of labor, and early household structures. This is one of the more disputed parts of the theory, and it should not be treated as settled fact. Human relationships developed under many pressures: childcare, protection, food sharing, mating competition, and cooperation between relatives. But cooking would have added another reason for individuals to coordinate their work and return consistently to the same group. The fire created a center. Food was brought back to it. Children remained near it. Individuals left and returned. Meals were distributed around it. And once the meal was finished, the fire remained. People had light. They had some protection. They were no longer chewing. That created a setting in which information could be shared repeatedly. Where animals had moved, which plants were dangerous, who had broken trust, where the group would travel next. Cooking may have fed the brain chemically. The hearth may have trained it socially.
The first hominin who ate heated food did not suddenly become human. There was no single evening when a roasted root produced a larger brain or a smaller jaw. The advantage would have been modest at first. Softer food, more usable energy, less chewing. But repeat that advantage every day, across thousands of generations, and small differences begin to become anatomy. Anatomy changes behavior. Behavior creates new pressures. Those pressures favor bodies that are even better suited to the new diet. Eventually, the animal using fire becomes an animal that struggles to live without food processing. So, did humans invent cooking, or did cooking create humans? Both, but not at the same time. Our ancestors first discovered that heat could change food. Then, natural selection worked on every advantage that followed. More accessible energy, shorter meals, smaller jaws, reduced digestive demands, longer evenings, and greater opportunities for cooperation. Humans improved the technology. The technology reshaped the humans using it. Cooking is not merely something humans do. It is one of the processes that made the modern human body possible. The next time food sits over a flame, inside an oven, or against a hot pan, the action will look completely ordinary. But the body waiting to eat that meal carries the result of an ancient experiment. Smaller teeth, a shorter gut, a costly brain, a life no longer organized around chewing. Fire changed the food. Then, slowly, the food changed the animal standing beside the fire.